thank you very much. I wanted to start out just with a slide of one of my favorite quotes by Martin Luther King. Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and the most inhumane. Yet, in the world today, there is a tremendous amount of inequality in the healthcare services that we're able to deliver. So what happens in Haiti, a country 90 minutes from Miami, is very different from what happens in the United States. And it's a very interesting time because what was once considered impossible is now becoming possible. So Bill and Melinda Gates gave a talk at the beginning of the International AIDS Conference, and here's their quote: "Our belief is that every life on this planet has equal value and that we cannot turn our backs on anyone with this disease." They were referring to AIDS. Yet, statistics are pretty dark. 29,000 children die each day of preventable disease and malnutrition. 3 million people of AIDS, 2 million of tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a disease that can be treated for $10 US. And 1 million people, mostly children, die of malaria. Malaria is an extraordinarily treatable disease. So these statistics mean that a major portion of the world does not have access to basic health care. And if you look, we hear a lot about the tuberculosis outbreak, HIV outbreak. It affects, for the most part, Africa, with a small, countries like Haiti and the Caribbean also face an overwhelming burden of disease. Well, it's always easier to talk about this if you use stories, and it's always better to use a very current story. As we talk about our goals in providing global health, I think at some point we have to decide that as Americans, what do we feel is our responsibility? In Haiti, they say, when the United States sneezes, we get pneumonia. So basically, whatever we believe in the United States and Europe, that's where the money comes from for what happens in global health. We haven't really come out as a country and said, do we believe that healthcare is a human right? But that's one of the issues I want to address today. This is a picture of a patient I met last week in Haiti. Her name is Coralie Roger. This picture was taken a couple of years ago. Her father had recently died. She's an only child, and she and her mother were very poor. It was a big struggle for them to provide food and to send her to school. She wants to be a doctor, so school was very, very important for her. Coralie was doing well until a few months ago. She started getting fevers and feeling a little off. August 22nd, she developed a severe case of pneumonia, so she was taken to the hospital. And on September 1st, she was diagnosed with acute myeloblastic leukemia. In a few days later, her mother borrowed money for a workup in Haiti, and the hematologist did a bone marrow biopsy and confirmed AML. And she said, you know, there's no treatment for this disease in Haiti. I'm sorry. And so Coralie and her mother put an article in the major Haitian newspaper. It said, can anyone help? Does anyone have any ideas? But Haiti is a very poor country and no help was forthcoming. And her aunt in Canada called many hospitals in Canada. Ironically, she worked as a secretary for a hospital in Canada. And she was told, you know, we're really sorry, but if you're going to have to give us a check for $100,000 and then we'll help you. And her church started raising money, but it wasn't going to be fast enough. On September 13th, Coralie was again admitted with bleeding, and her hematocrit was 7. My record at the teaching hospital in Boston where I work is 12. 7 is becoming incompatible with life. A few days later, her mother's fiance was fired for missing his 3rd day of work. With an unemployment rate of 80%, you don't get many chances in Haiti to miss work. And on October 11th, I was in Haiti last week writing a tuberculosis proposal, and they presented this case to me. So here is my question for you. Is it my ethical responsibility as a physician working between Boston and Haiti to try to help Coralie? So raise your hands if you think that it is my ethical responsibility as a physician to try to do something from Coralie. Thank you, I like this. I like you guys. Well, my dangerous idea is, actually, it's a Partners in Health motto, that our goal is to treat every patient as if they were our family member. And Coralie had a happy ending to the story. Actually, on Thursday at 2 o'clock, I called my friends at Mass General, which is a wonderful hospital in Boston, and they presented her case to Free Care Committee, which usually takes quite a while, but they sped it up. And Friday, this is just a few days ago Friday, at 2 o'clock, her mother came and said, you know, I said, let's just pretend we'll get free care. So go get your photograph, get your passport together. I'm going to send some letters to Boston for support. And so her mom came at 2 o'clock with all these papers. And I called Mass General and I said, there's a little phone by the fax machine. That's the one phone that dials out to the U.S. And I said, did you guys make a decision yet? And they said, well, we think so, but, you know, it takes time to do these things. And I said, yeah, but you said if we wait till Monday that she could die over the weekend. And they said, yeah, go get a visa. And I said, yeah, the problem is I can't get a visa if I don't have your letter. And they said, okay, try to get the visa. And if you need us, call us back. So at 3 o'clock, we arrived at the U.S. Embassy, which closed at 3:30. And they said, you think we can give you a visa? We close in half an hour. And I said, I called you this morning. I told you we were trying. This girl can die. Please, will you help us? And in the process, they rather overlooked the fact that we didn't actually have the letter from Mass General, which is a requirement for a visa. And they said, okay. And I think they felt very good about being able to do that, because I think as human beings, the depth of our soul, we would like to think that every person is equal. And we would like to think that children don't die of leukemia. And that's, you know, I think it's very despairing to look at those dismal statistics. And a case like Coralie can be an antidote to that despair when each person is able to still have that humanity. They're not a number, they're not cost effective, but you're doing everything you can to help them. So Coralie, oopsie, I skipped. So we went to the next plane, our whole family came to the airport. It was a very big deal. And Coralie is at Mass General right now getting chemotherapy. And her mom said, as we took this picture, wait, now make sure you get all the equipment. And I thought, IV fluid as equipment? But at any rate, Coralie is going to do very well. Mass General rolled out the red carpet for her, and she'll get leukemia treatment. You can say, well, is that really cost effective? Is that really how you should be spending your time for one kid? You know, it took you a few extra days. She's going to be there for 6 months. And I would only say that Partners in Health is treating 1.25 million people a year in Haiti now, and we've brought about 10 patients to Boston. We can treat almost everything in Haiti, but when you have that motto, to treat every patient as if they are your sister or your brother or your mother, it brings dignity to a very dark, dark place. And dignity is extraordinarily important. Everyone wants to be treated with dignity. So I have 11 minutes and 34 seconds. I'm going to talk a little bit about Haiti, and because I'm only using Haiti as a model for the rest of the world, but because I've been working in Haiti and I only have 11 and a half minutes, I can really only choose 2 programs in Haiti to talk to you about. And my goal really is to talk about what can we do about those dismal statistics? How can we solve these global health issues? So this is Haiti. That's a typical road in Haiti, and unfortunately, that is also a typical shack. They say it can fool the sun, but it cannot fool the rain. And so when it rains, the floor gets wet. Just to give you a very quick history of Partners in Health, but also of how that motto has played out in the world today, really. This is the hospital Conge in 1983. Paul built this hospital, and at that time it was a very novel idea to build a hospital, because people were saying, well, that's not really appropriate technology. You should just do breastfeeding and, you know, really simple things, vaccinations. And Paul said, yeah, but the people in the community want a hospital, so we're going to build a hospital. And this hospital has actually become rather famous over the last 10 years, really, for the treatment of tuberculosis and HIV. But they don't just treat tuberculosis and HIV, they treat everything. In 1986, it was the first case of HIV in Haiti, in the Plateau Central, which is where the hospital is located. In 1988, they started offering HIV testing for free. And about the same time, TB and HIV really were becoming very big problems. And a lot of patients were dying of tuberculosis. And they discovered that when they fed the patients and when they gave them transportation subsidies and when each patient had what they termed an accompagnateur to visit them every day at home and provide social support, that tuberculosis cure rates went up to 100%. And so that became sort of the backbone of everything that has happened since at Partners in Health. In 1994, they diagnosed the first case of drug-resistant tuberculosis in Haiti, meaning that it's resistant to rifampin and isoniazid, the two most effective drugs. At that time, it was $15,000 per person for treatment. And if you read the Paul Farmer profile in the New Yorker, Paul borrowed a fair amount of money from the Brigham and Women's Hospital, unbeknownst to them, and started patients on drug-resistant tuberculosis. They had a friend in 1995 named Father Jacques Rousseau, and he said, why don't you guys also come and work in Peru? So they started working in Peru, and then Father Jack got tuberculosis. So they took him back to the Brigham and Women's Hospital, where he died of tuberculosis. And they said, well, how can this be? We had him on therapy. And then 6 weeks later, from the Massachusetts State Lab, came the test that showed resistant to all TB drugs. So they started screening for drug-resistant TB in Peru. And about that time in Haiti, they started mother-to-child prevention for HIV, kind of weaving these together so I can get both diseases there. But basically the goal here is whatever they're doing in the US, let's try and do that in Haiti. So they have a big study that shows you can prevent mother-to-child disease in the United States, let's try and prevent it in Haiti. You guys have drug-resistant TB in New York, let's treat it the same way in Peru. They met a fair amount of resistance to the tuberculosis problem, and between 1996 and 2001 they had a lot of fights with the World Health Organization, the Peruvian government, and the WHO actually came out and said, you know, some people just have to die because it's too expensive to treat them. And then Jim Kim's point was, yeah, but these drugs are off patent. You haven't tried yet. I mean, if you're going to commit people to a death sentence, at least see if the drugs are on patent or not. These drugs were just decades old. So working with the World Health Organization, they actually started a committee called the Green Light Committee. They got pharmaceutical manufacturers to produce the drugs, all generic. And actually, I was in Port-au-Prince working on a Green Light Committee application when I met Coralie last week. Basically, now you can get TB meds for drug-resistant TB in any country in the world for about 5% of what it would have cost had they not taken the drugs off patent, etc. So now multi-drug resistant tuberculosis is a treatable infection. Between 1998 and 2001, again sort of ahead of the curve a little bit, started what was labeled the HIV Equity Initiative in Haiti. Now, Partners in Health is a very small group, and we had what was called a falling off the cliff date, i.e. we were going to have to close up because we didn't have any more money. And it became, how much money can we spend on HIV drugs, I mean, you know, versus maybe not having enough money to go on. And a few groups got together and helped out Partners in Health, and they started 100 patients on TB treatment using that same model that they'd had for tuberculosis. Food, transportation support, someone going to your house every day, bringing you the meds. These patients live far away in villages. Somebody will come to your house if you're feeling nauseated. If you're too sick to come to the clinic, they'll help you. And they had outcomes as good as the US. And this actually was one of the programs that was held up for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. It was held up as a success project. And you might say, you guys had less than 100 patients on treatment. How can you start a worldwide sort of anti-AIDS treatment project with less than 100 patients? But the sad thing is, no one else had any patients on treatment. And so it was at least, you could say, look, these patients, we may not have a good lab, but these patients are doing really well. And when we brought blood back to Boston, it showed the viral suppression at the same rate that we had anywhere in the United States. However, at that time, we still did not have any money for meds. I was giving a talk, and I met an executive of a very, very prominent, one of the major pharmaceutical companies. And he said, hey, I'd like to go to Haiti with you. So we brought him, we gave him a lot of rum and tried to kind of talk him into giving us meds. And Paul actually looked at him and said, do you want to partner with us? And he said, no, Paul. You would be irresponsible to treat HIV in a place like Haiti. If you can't guarantee that you can give these patients meds for the rest of their life, you shouldn't do it at all. You should be focusing on water and food. And so that's really the story we got from almost everybody until, and you know, the thing I have to point out is that patients with HIV die very slowly. They come in, this is a slide of how they present, but they come in with tuberculosis, you cure the TB. They come back with pneumonia, you cure that. They come back losing 30 pounds and now they have diarrhea, you treat that. Some of these patients, it's a 3-year process of certain death. And when all the doctors know that treatment is available in the United States, it's extraordinarily demoralizing. So we ask, you know, why do doctors not want to work in poor countries? It's demoralizing to work in a place where your patients die when you know that there is a treatment out there. So about 6 months after that trip by the pharmaceutical agent, the Global Fund for AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria actually had these proposals. And we thought, well, Haiti is never going to get money, but let's apply anyway. So we collaborated with about 12 other groups, and we very quickly wrote up this proposal, and Haiti was the first country to get money. Well, from then and now, the world is entirely different. We now have universal treatment for HIV and AIDS in rural Haiti and also in Port-au-Prince. I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. And we call the HIV funding the cheval bataille, which means battle horse in Creole, because we've leveraged that money to treat 1.25 million patients with anything that they come in with. And as I told you, it's supervised therapy where you get a lot of social support as well. Here's the accompaniment to our bringing pills. And this is what the hospital looks like now in Conch. It's beautiful. And there's artwork on the wall, and you just feel good to walk in there. Well, there's not just one hospital complex, now there's 9. And just want to give you a couple quick words about how we did that. I'm getting a little short on time, but one site where I lived for a year and did the scale up was in Las Caobas. And this is, before we got there, locked clinic. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 10 to 20 patients a day getting treated, no lab, no HIV test available, no meds, Cuban doctor doesn't really speak Creole. And this was when we got there in July of 2002, this was our first patient, Mueller Pognon. But Mueller died of tuberculosis. Why? Because he had advanced disease at the time he came to us. So Mueller did not need to die. He died because there was no health system in place. By just a year later, we had a fully functioning clinic we also built a hospital. We had a pharmacy with antiretroviral therapy. We had a lab. We had a generator, which we kind of moved every day from our house to the clinic. And we had a very good network of community health workers. And our TB diagnosed and cure rates, we went from 5, which was before we got there, to 250. So basically that was 250 lives saved at the cost of $10 per patient for meds. And this is Las Caobas just a few months later. Thriving clinic, and it's still doing extremely well. Now I'm just going to quickly switch gears to Port-au-Prince. This is a recent article from the journal Science, making headway under hellacious circumstances. This impoverished, conflict-ridden country is staging a feisty battle against HIV. This is Bill Pop. He's the head of GESCO, a Haitian doctor. You'll note in the background of that photograph the barbed wire and this was in a neighborhood that they used to call Kosovo before the peacekeepers arrived in Port-au-Prince. Now there's usually 2 of the UN troops, 2 of the tanks parked in front of the clinic. And half of the patients live in a neighborhood called Cité Soleil. And the peacekeepers don't enter that neighborhood because it's perceived as too dangerous and they don't want to get shot. But that's where half the patients live, in Cité Soleil. And that article was about Partners in Health for work in rural Haiti and then GESCO's work in urban Port-au-Prince. So GESCO, founded in 1982, it's a French word for the Haitian study group on Kaposi sarcoma and opportunistic infections. It was the time of the dictatorship when they named it and they couldn't say the word AIDS. So that's how it got this crazy name. They documented the first case of AIDS in a developing country in 1983 in the New England Journal of Medicine. Basically, they built up a beautiful clinic over the last whatever number of years that is. They give all of this care free of charge, universal care in Port-au-Prince. They give food, transportation fees, and they're doing a variety of NIH-funded trials as well. They follow the patients very closely. They now have they're following over 12,000 patients, and nearly 3,000 are on antiretroviral therapy, which is the HIV cocktail that that turns HIV basically into a chronic disease. And this is a great success for the doctors at Cornell. Antiretroviral therapy in 1,000 patients with AIDS in Haiti. This was December 1st, 2005 in the most prestigious medical journal in the world, showing outcomes as good as the United States. So half the patients live in a slum where the peacekeepers won't enter. They don't have the fancy labs that we have, but the outcomes are as good as the United States. And kind of a happy ending to the story. It's not just JESCO and it's not just Partners in Health. It is now, treatment is spreading throughout all of Haiti. And I just want to give you, in closing, some before and after pictures, just to remind you of how incredible it is when you bring antiretroviral therapy. This is Joseph June. He likes to say he's the most famous AIDS patient in the world because the World Health Organization picked up his photograph and it was on the website. But we diagnosed him in the town of Las Calabas, and he was nearly dead. He had HIV and tuberculosis, and that's his chest x-ray. That's him just 6 months later. So it's very remarkable. And he was at the meeting in Toronto giving a press conference. So he's doing great. He told me I need to find him a better job. He's tired of shining shoes, and he'd like to please get a job at the clinic. And this is Eve, and Eve does work at the clinic before and after. And that's my last slide. Just really to point out that every hour that we delay is a patient who did not have to die, who will die. And my motto in terms of global health is that when we act as if it was us who had the infection, we try harder. And that's all it takes, is trying harder, because 1 billion people do not need to suffer the way they suffer. A very small investment from us could dramatically change the world. Thank you.